Hello everyone, welcome to 3ddesignacademy.com. In this lesson, we'll continue with part 80 of the Mercedes-Benz E-Class Coupe project. Okay, so in the previous lesson, I worked on this fillet over here. I think it looks pretty good. I think the highlight looks pretty good. The transition is actually not that bad. So what I'm going to do is start doing a little bit of cleanup on other areas too. So let's go ahead and continue on with that. All right, so, well, I'm going to put a fillet over here. So this is actually not necessary anymore. So let me just put that in the hide layer. And I'm going to go ahead and put a fillet between these two. So let's go ahead and do that. So the theoretical is just going to be this point over here. Actually, it should be this one. So let's go ahead and just, well, actually, you know what? I'm just going to do a straight line because I think it's pretty straight from the bottom. Just going to snap it over here like this. Oops. Let's go ahead and move this one over here, and I'm going to snap it over here like this. I'm going to center pivot like this, and let's go ahead and project it from the bottom. So I'm going to project it from Z like this, or you can always go to view and go to bottom and project it like this. It doesn't really matter. And I'm just going to delete this curve over here, and I'm going to delete this curve over here. And I'm going to go ahead and trim over here, and let's go ahead and put a fillet over here. So for this one, I guess it's not super critical. Of course, if the CV structure matches, that'll be better. Well, let's take a look. So I'm just going to do a freeform blend. It's going to be curved from both sides, and I'm going to put one here and like this. And it's going to be edge aligned on both sides, and let's just take a look. And to be honest, I think the intersection looks pretty good. Yes, the CV location is a little bit off, but it's pretty flat, so I don't think it's really necessary for me to make any adjustments. So I'm going to go ahead and extend this one over here like this, and I'm just going to intersect between the two like this over here, and let's go ahead and trim over here, and I'm going to trim over here. I'm just going to delete the construction history, and that should be good right there. Okay, so that looks pretty good. There should be a fillet running through, but I think I'm going to leave that for a little bit later. And I think while I'm at it, however, I think I am going to divide this one though. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say extend, and I'm going to just divide the surface over here because these are supposed to be, I believe they're body color. Let's take a look. Yeah, it's supposed to be body color over here, and it's supposed to have fillet running through here. So that's going to be done. And while I do, let's take a look. I do need to put a fillet over here, but this, I'm not quite sure how I'm going to execute this, but it still needs to be done. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, you know what? I'm not quite sure. Well, I still think that there needs to be a fillet over here. So let's go ahead and do that. And it does look like, well, I don't quite know how this area is supposed to be. I thought I had some idea, but I feel like it's a little bit different than what I expected. Now, if you look at this picture over here, yes, there needs to be a flat over here, but I don't know. For some reason, I feel like how I see from the top and the bottom is a little bit different than what I thought it was going to be. I think this one, I'm going to leave it for a little bit later. I don't think this is going to require any kind of major tear up if there needs to be a change. But I do think, yeah, that part is a little bit weird. So I might work on that a little bit later. And I also feel like this, actually, I think I might need to adjust this one a little bit also. Actually, you know what? That's a bit of a shame. Okay, so I think what needs to happen is I definitely do think that this part, well, if you see this part over here, you'll see that it's actually really thin. However, I should have accounted for the thickness of this piece over here. I haven't done that, so I'm going to make sure that that's done. And I think okay, so I think it's a good thing that I noticed this now. But if you look at this over here, you'll see that there's a little bit angle difference between this part and this part. So I think that needs to be done. I should have totally accounted for that, but obviously I didn't. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, before I continue, let me just see if I can find a different reference for this. I know that there is some view that I can take a look at from the bottom. So let me see if I can find some reference over here. Now, I know that this is not quite the same model. This is different. I believe this is the exhaust for the AMG version, but at least it'll give me some idea as to how this area is supposed to be. And let's take a look. Unfortunately, this one doesn't have much info. This one doesn't really either. Okay, so I think the only reliable reference that I can use, well, let's see if there's anything that I can reference from this one. Well, kind of. Okay, I thought they were the same angle, but let's see. I'm just going to have this up. Let's see if anything shows here. Yes and no. I think this one. Now, that said, however, I do feel like the angle is the same, but if you look at this one, I also feel like the angle is a little bit different. If I do make the angle the same, it'll be a little bit easier to do because, well, I just have to give it a little bit of division with surface breaker instead of having to resurface everything. But at least this area goes, I think it does need to be. Let's take a look. Well, I think one thing is for sure. I do need to adjust the thickness a little bit. So, well, let's determine that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do an insert over here to make sure that this thickness is accounted for. So let's go ahead and do that first. So let's do this. Instead of doing just I don't think I'm going to break up the surface just yet because I do feel like they're the same angle. So that's however, I do need to make sure that this is accounted for. So I'm just going to put that over here. And what I do think I need to do for definitely, I do think that I need to separate this part. And this one is not going to end up as a corner over here. So I think that does need to change. Oh, actually with the surface structure, okay. So I think there needs to be a little bit of surface change over here. That's okay. So that needs a little bit of work because I don't, well, maybe it does become a little bit thinner. Well, let's see. I'm just going to make this a different color. So let's take a look. So maybe I'll just make it black. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to project this one over here. I'm going to say view and I'm just going to trim the whole thing. And so that there's no interference over here. Okay, so that's a pretty good division. Okay, so I think at least this one, I think can stay as is. Now, as far as the thickness goes, I'm not quite sure. So I'll probably have to do that too. So let's do this. In order to make this a little bit better, easier to see, I'm just going to trim the whole thing and I'm just going to symmetry it using the layer. So let's go ahead and project over here like this. And I'm just going to extend this one back like that. And I'm just going to trim it over here like this. And that should give me a pretty decent idea and see if the proportions are correct. All right, so I think this area might need a little adjustment. I think this angle as is might be a little bit too sharp. Well, I mean too vertical. So if I pull this down, that's going to, I don't think that's going to work because at least at the bottom over here, I think it's pretty flat. So I think I should probably account for that. Now, as far as the thickness of this piece goes, well, let's take a look. This is our best reference that I have. So let's take a look at that. So from the bottom, actually I should probably trim this too. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to project this one over here like this. And let's just go ahead and trim so that I have some reference. Okay, and I'll probably color these black too, so that's a little bit easier to see. Okay, let's color them black, like that. Okay, so as far as just proportion goes, I think it's actually not that bad, although let's make this a little bit lighter because I think I should be able to determine which surface I'm looking at, so that at least I can determine well, one thing's gray or the other, because if it's just black, I don't think I can see anything. I still do need to determine the ratio on all that stuff. So I mean, just looking at this, I think it's pretty good, although it could probably be a little bit thicker. Now the problem is, there's no indication on the canvas. This is probably the front surface. So if you look at this one, I know that there's a section in the middle. Let's see. Well, maybe not. Oh, okay. So I think I might have made a slight mistake. Okay, so if you look at the section over here, I think there's only 2 divisions. So there's no flat in the middle, which means that this one, that's really not good. Okay, so this means that this one over here, let me just turn the symmetry off. Okay, so this should only have 2 breaks, and that means that this one over here should actually be angled in, which means I do have to adjust some of these surfaces in. Okay, so that's actually a big mistake. There's going to be quite a lot of rework. So what needs to happen is that this surface is I thought there was 2 sections. I thought there was a flat in the middle, but looks like, at least looking at this picture, it looks like there isn't. So what needs to happen is that this break over here is all the front surface over here, or the top surface, and this one is the bottom facing surface right through here. Okay. So unfortunately, I do have to adjust this, but I think this also means I can probably put a little bit of offset here as well. Now, this is going to take a little bit of rework, but well, it looks like it's necessary, so let's go ahead and do that. All right. So I do apologize for that. Actually, I really should have noted this. However, that said, it does need to be done, so let's go ahead and do that. Now, it does mean that it's going to require a rebuild, but I don't think there's going to be any proportional changes on the surfaces. So let's go ahead and do this. Now, hopefully, well, this should be, as much as this is not a good way to, I mean, this is going to require a little bit of work, but I think it's also a very good practice in, let's say there's a design change in the studio, in a studio professional environment. You still need to do this. So I'm going to, hopefully this is a good practice in order to showcase to you guys how changes can be done. And hopefully, this will be a good demonstration. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this surface over here. And anytime you have a change like this, I do want to make sure that I have a copy of this. So let me just delete all of these like this. I think everything looks good over here. And I'm just going to delete all the layers, unused layers, and I'm just going to pop one out like this. And let's go ahead and just copy, well, basically copy one. So I'm just going to Control C, Control V, copy and paste, delete the construction history. And basically this is going to serve as a whip 7. And I have a reference just in case I need to go back. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I think the angle looks pretty similar over here, so I'm just going to do that. So let's go ahead and pull this in like this, and I'm just going to use align. Now when you're changing stuff, align does come in very handy. So I'm going to extensively using it. So I'm going to say continue align. So I'm just going to pick this edge over here, and I'm going to say blending on, XRC result 1, and do it like that. So I'm just going to make sure that the angle is pretty similar. Now I don't think it needs to be the same as much as close as it looks. I'm not going to make it the same. I'm just going to make it, you know, somewhat close. Okay, so I think that looks good over here. This surface of course has to change in angle, so I'm going to do that too. So let's go ahead and untrim this one like this, and let's go ahead and see if okay, so it looks like the C was, oh no, I don't need that. Okay, this one I'm going to basically keep it the same because I think the thickness still needs to be somewhat similar. So I'm going to keep that the same. So what I can do is, well, for this one, you can do project align. Sometimes you can also just project a curve. In this case, I would like to project a curve because I do need to trim all the way, and sometimes project align just stops in the middle. So this might not be a bad time to just project a curve, trim, and align like this. Okay, and now I'm just going to do extra series of 2, and I'm going to say blend factor of 0 because whatever angle change that happened here, it needs to follow through over here. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now this does mean that this surface also needs to be changed, so let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to trim all the all of this. I'm going to hide the fillet for a second. Okay, so let's go ahead and align over here too. This is just going to be right to edge like this, and I'm just going to make sure. Okay, so quite a lot of spans over here, so I'm going to say 1 2 3 and 4 5, not spans, degrees. Just going to lay it down like that, and that is going to make it a little bit similar to this one, although it looks like this one has quite a bit of angle, so I should probably pay attention to that. All right, so this one does have a lot of thickness over here, although I think it's starting to become a little bit less so over here, but at least let's create a good base surface. So I think what I'm going to do is, because there's quite a lot of angle over here, I'm going to add a little bit of angle over here as well. So let's take a look. So I'm just going to grab this curve. Actually, I do need some kind of reference over here. So let's see. I'm just going to turn the patch precision on. Wait, where's the center? Why am I not seeing? Oh, okay. So it looks like it's been trimmed the wrong way. Okay, so I do have a COS over here, so that's good. However, I think I'm going to angle a little bit. So since this actually needs to be quite horizontal in angle, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just make it similar to this angle over here on this surface. Yes, I do think they look about close. So let's do this. I'm just going to duplicate this surface over this curve over here, and I'm just going to, well, basically use this as an indicator and just slide it a little bit forward in car. Now I think to exactly match it might be a little bit too much, but at least I can get it close, and that's going to help on this side. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to align this one over here back to the curve. Blending should be XR0 1, blend factor of 1, and let's take a look. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let's just take a look at it from this angle over here. And I think I'm actually going to change the color because it's kind of hard to see the shape. And as far as this one goes, I'm just going to just shove it forward like this for now, so that it's not in the way. Okay, so I'm thinking that I can probably do a little bit more. I don't particularly see a problem with pushing a little bit more. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay, let's take a look. I don't think I'm going to like actually match the angle, but let's just make it a little bit closer. So I'm just going to pull it a little bit forward in car like this. Okay, so I think that looks pretty good. Don't think it's too much angle. Well, let's make it a little bit glossy so that it's a little bit easier to see. Yeah, I don't think that's too bad. Okay, so after that, let's take a look. I mean, all the history is on, so they should have all translated at the same time. So looking at this, I do think that this one needs to have a little bit more angle. So if that's the case, let's go ahead and I'll probably, well, it looks like this surface probably needs to be redone. So I'm just going to make a little bit of change over here. Now, that said, however, I do think, well, let's take a look. Let's see. I don't think I want to move this too much, although the only thing I probably need to do, yeah, I probably want to keep the thickness as is, and if there's any changes, I can always just reproject this one. So I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem. Now, the only, well, I take that back. I don't think I want to do too much of that. All right, so let's take a look. Because this does have quite a lot of horizontal angle. However, I don't know if I want to make it any thicker than this. I'm pretty sure there is a point. Okay, so let's do this. I'm just going to keep this as is. No, I'm not going to keep it as is, but I'm just going to change, shove it for a little bit forward. So I'm going to just duplicate a curve like, actually, let's do this. Okay, so right now I'm just going to try to figure out the angle. So I'm just going to delete the surface over here like this, and I'm just going to do a freeform blend between the two. So it's going to be positioned on both sides. I'm going to click here and click here. Now I'm going to give it a, actually let's give it a crown right now. So I'm going to Bezier, I'm going to turn that off, and let's give it a little bit of crown, proportional. I'm going to just do that and give it a little bit of crown over there. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this curve over here, put the pivot somewhere over here. I'm just going to slide it down like this, and whatever angle that makes is what it's going to be used as. And I'm just going to do a little bit more to give it the necessary angle that I think this surface requires. And it's actually quite a lot. I would say that's pretty close. So let's see if that's enough. Let's take a look at this image over here. I'm looking up from the bottom. Now, unfortunately, this is not super high res, but this is all I have. So I'm going to have to use that. And look at this picture. Maybe it's not too bad. Now, this is hiding quite a lot of the thickness over here. So let's do this. Now, this was created using natural. However, I'm just going to do a bi-rail. So let's go into 1 and 2. I'm just going to do this. Now, because of the angle difference, that there is going to be a little bit of twist over here. Hopefully it doesn't detract it from the surface too much. I'm just going to take a look. Okay, now it is a little bit thicker on the outboard side. But that said, I think it's going to be fine. Now, obviously I don't have a super high res image of that piece, but maybe I'll be okay. All right. Other thing that I'm going to do is I'm just going to check the height over here. Yeah, maybe it won't be too bad. I think it's still somewhat within the sketch. Let's take a look at the canvas. So I'm just going to grab the rear one like this, and I'm going to say height unselected. Yeah, I think we're still on target. I don't think I'm going to go anything beyond this though. However, one thing I can do is make this to make the angle change. Another thing I can do is I can just bring this line down a little bit. Now I'm pretty sure there's a little bit of adjustment that I have to make, but this will definitely help me achieve a little bit of more horizontal angle. And if you look at this over here, and let me just hide this one over here. So this has a lot more angle, which will be matching this one actually quite well. So I think that's pretty good. Actually, that looks pretty good. That looks about on target. Now that does mean though, I do have to make a little change here and there. The theoreticals all have to match. So I'm going to be doing that next. So let's take a look. So I'm going to just, well, let's do this. I'm going to hide all the fillets. I might have to rework some of them. That's okay. They're necessary. And I'm just going to put it over here like this. And let's untrim everything so that I can go back to the theoretical. Let's hide this one over here. And I'm going to just make it visible again. And I'm going to hide these over here as well. This one I'm going to hide as well, because it doesn't really help. And what I'm going to do over here is I'm just going to do a rail and see if it works. Actually, this one, oh, this is, that's a bit of a problem. Okay, so let's do this. This, I already have the bottom edge, but the problem is right now it's been extended. Basically, this was the edge that I used. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to extend it and I'm going to trim convert it so that it's a little bit easier to use. And this one, I'm going to just make it a little bit independent. So let's do this. I'm just going to grab this one. I'm going to keep the top edge as is. I'm just going to do a freeform blend from this one to this one, like that. I'm just going to say default on both sides, so that's neutral as possible and not affected by the CV structure. And I'm just going to do this, and that should work. All right, so let's take a look. I think the angle, although it does look a little bit shorter over here, but I also think, yeah, let's do that. I'm going to hide this for a second. I do think though that this one probably needs to be a little bit longer. So I'm actually going to pull it down a little bit more. Like this. And I do have to create a balance between these two. So hopefully it'll be okay. Hopefully I'm going to be okay. All right, so now that's done, let's go ahead and extend this one. And I'm going to make a little bit of adjustment too. Now this one, I don't think it's going to be too bad. However, I don't think it's going to be too bad. Now I do need to make sure that it does fit from the rear. And I think it's, well, actually a little bit extension might not be too bad. So let's do this. So for this one, here's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to delete the COS over here, and I do not want to redo any of these if possible, if at all possible. So I'm going to do this. I'm just going to untrim this piece like this, and I'm going to just extend it like that, and I'm just going to intersect it over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab this curve over here. Actually, let's delete the construction history on this because that's just a simple bi-rail. I'm going to just snap it over here, and let's take a look. Now from the side view, there's going to be a little bit of variance, but I don't think it's going to be too much. So let's take a look. Yeah, I prefer this to be not so long. So maybe instead of doing this, I think I'm just going to pull this back. So let's keep the edge as is. So let's keep this edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull this back a little bit. And I'm just going to, well, I'm going to align this one. Well, let's extend it back a little bit so that it keeps the proportion somewhat. I'm going to align this one over here like that. I'm just going to make it close. I don't need to make it exact. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. I'm just going to snap it right here. And that is going to allow me to not change this edge, because this edge is pretty parallel to the canvas. I mean, it's still poking out a little bit on the bottom. I think there's a little bit of taper towards the top. So I think I'm just going to do that. And what I can do is this will limit the amount of length that or the width that it has. And if I need a little bit more room here to make this longer, I can always push this down. Now that said, however, well, that will minimize the change on this piece over here, although that does change the angle on this. I don't think, I think it's going to be a less tear up than if I were to do something else. So I guess that this, the only thing left is probably this one. I don't think I like the angle as much, so let's do this. I'm just going to do a rail for now, and I'm going to see how it matches up. So I'm going to do a rail. Oh, no, I don't want that. I'm actually going to delete this. I can just use the edge, so that's fine. Just going to do a rail over here like this, and I'm just going to keep it natural. And you see that there's an angle doesn't match at all, and if I were to even just extend this one, it's not going to work. So this, I'm going to have to do a little bit of work. Okay, so I'll have to take a look at this. That's it, however, I think this is going to take a little bit more work, so let's just stop it here and continue in the next one. All right, so unfortunately, I do have to do a lot of rework on this, but it is for the sake of making this a little bit more realistic, a little bit more like the actual car. So let's continue on with that. Okay, so that is it for part 80. We will pick this up in the next tutorial, and thank you guys for watching.